Victoria Maskell, welcome to the Frugal Spender podcast. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
That's all right. We were just saying, just before we started recording, that I've been following you for a little while now, but I just started listening to your podcast and I find it really interesting. Like, I want you to treat me like I'm an absolute idiot when it comes to the subject that you are an expert in, because historically and notoriously, I'm quite a skeptic when it comes to um, things that aren't, let's say, objectively scientifically proven. So I've always dismissed things like God, even.
Mhm.
Like, I've come very much not full 180, but I'm definitely certainly more open to that sort of thing as I get older. I think it's probably plays part of it. Um, but things like, I don't know, crystals and anything that seems like, I don't know, astrology, anything that seems like it's obviously, to me, obviously, I use the word obviously loosely,
Yeah.
like objectively provable, I've always dismissed. And I look back and think how naive I've been to be like that. So I'm very much open to thinking and trying different things. So I'm going to stop waffling now. And for anyone who doesn't know who you are, could you give a little bit of a background of what your expertise is in, a bit of a background on you and what you do now?
Awesome. Yeah. So I always find this the hardest question. So I'm going to try and be as succinct as possible. My name is Victoria. I'm a psychologist, mindset, and manifestation coach. And I really focus in on the science of our brains, how it affects our actions, and how it affects our behaviors. So I specialize particularly in money mindset, which I think we can have a really good conversation around. And it all came about, obviously, I've got a degree in psychology and cognitive neuroscience. So I love psychology, I love how the brain works. I also, in my early 20s, when I was at university, suffered from panic attacks out of nowhere. I had this awful anxiety. I didn't know where it was coming from. And kind of as a last resort, I found hypnosis. I was quite skeptical, but I was desperate. That led me down this journey of understanding the subconscious mind, our subconscious programs, later into kind of manifestation, but from a very scientific perspective. And what I do now is I help people who might be wanting to grow their businesses, working on their money mindset, working on money blocks. I help people who are suffering from fears, phobias, anxieties, and I help people manifest, but using a scientific process. So, kind of what you've just touched on, maybe for people who don't really resonate with the idea of angels, God, crystals, energy, and they want something
Mm.
a little bit more tangible to use to achieve their goals. So, we might be working on stuff to do with money mindset, or it could be to do with travel or relationships. So, everything I do is really grounded in science, grounded in the role that our subconscious mind plays in how we take our actions, and just basically helping people to live the life they want, getting over the subconscious blocks and limiting beliefs. So, I hope that's answered your question, but
Mm.
that's kind of what I do in a nutshell.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to go a little bit deeper into like the scientific method of doing that, if you wouldn't mind. But one thing in particular that I really want to talk about, and we didn't discuss about a potential topic to talk about today, but it sprung to mind earlier that I think I even commented on a video that you did previously about the subject of imposter syndrome, and I'd love to because I've definitely always, even still to this day, suffer with it. So I'd like to definitely pick your brains with that. But the actual method of, like, the scientific method of how you would apply this sort of manifestation. Let's start there. Manifestation. What would you, from your perspective, when you speak to a new client,
Yeah.
um, how would you describe that sort of scientific method from beginning to end?
Okay. There's going to be two strands to this. We're going to talk about a formula and we're going to talk about how we create our reality. So, if we start with the formula, it doesn't have a very sexy kind of acronym or name, but it's programs lead to thoughts and feelings, which lead to actions and results. So, what this means is we all have a subconscious mind. So, we have an innate part of us that's probably our reptilian complex, our limbic system that drives a huge amount of what we do. Now, this is great when this is like adaptive automatic processes. So, for anyone listening to this who drives their car, who's passed their test, that has probably gone over to your subconscious mind because you know how to do it now. But if you remember your first driving lesson, it's probably quite stressful. There's a lot of, I don't know where to do, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to look, I don't know what, I put my foot on, okay, I've stalled the car. There's a lot of stuff going on. We send a lot to our subconscious mind and it becomes a program. Now, if this is adaptive, if that program is, I can achieve anything, money is amazing, I can be successful at whatever I want, then that leads to thoughts and feelings that are positive, are adaptive. It impacts the actions you take. So the jobs you go for, the businesses you start, the relationships you attract, and ultimately the results you get are based on that success story. But what happens for most of us, at least in some areas of our lives, is we have maladaptive programs. So we have limiting beliefs and stories that could be around money, could be around self-worth. There definitely could be some imposter syndrome in there as well. And those programs that we might not even know are in that reptilian complex lead us to think certain things and feel certain things. So if this was around money, we might start thinking that money isn't for us, money is hard to make, that we're not good with money, that we're just not the kind of person that could ever be wealthy. Then that determines our actions. So how we act around money, how we spend it, how we save it, the jobs we go for, how we talk about it, who we socialize with, and that determines the results we get. So when I talk about manifestation, I'm not talking about, oh, I get my journal out. Don't get me wrong, I do like journaling, but it's not just I write down on a piece of paper, I will be a millionaire in 2024. I close the book and I sit back and I go,
Wait for it to happen. Yeah.
yeah. And I think this is the thing. There's a lot of misconceptions, and I think people are quite apprehensive around the word manifestation because they think, well, is it a scam? Like, all right, then why isn't every manifestation teacher suddenly a lottery winner? Why haven't they manifested every single thing that they ever want? And I think when we put it back to science and say, to manifest something, you have to play a part, you have to take an action. That could be speaking to someone, that could be having a conversation in the supermarket that leads to someone saying, hang on a minute, actually, I work for a company that is really looking to hire someone just like you. Would you be interested in this role that could be your dream job? But your thoughts and feelings and programs will have impacted whether you started that conversation, whether you were talking about what you do in a positive light. So manifestation, when you really drive it back, is about the programs you have around money, job, relationship that drive your thoughts, feelings, actions, and the results. So that's one piece of it. The second piece is we know now that the reality we all see is a different one. And what I mean by that is your reality of however you are listening to this is going to be completely different to your next door neighbors. You might be in the same climate, you might be walking down the same street, but the reality you actually experience is based on your thoughts and feelings and a particular part of your brain called your reticular activating system. Now, the science behind this is every single second, there are billions of bits of information that you could process. But your brain, as great as it is, can't process that amount. So what it has to do is it has to filter it. And it filters it down to something crazy like 0.5% of what is available. And the way it filters it is based on what you feed it. So you feed a particular part of your brain called your reticular activating system. Think of it a bit like a PA. So you might say to your PA, I only want to speak to these people today. This is my priority today. I'm recording podcasts. Please don't interrupt me. Anything about a podcast, let me know, but everything else, ignore. It's not relevant today. You're doing this every single day around, again, around money, around success, around relationships. You are feeding that part of your brain thoughts and feelings around what is and isn't important. So if those thoughts and feelings are, money's hard to make, I never have enough money, there's too many bills coming in, it's like, oh, that's what you want to see. Okay, ignore all the other things, ignore the potential for a new job, ignore the potential for saving on an energy company or something. It literally means you don't see it in your reality because your brain has to filter it out. So when we want to manifest something different, we have to think about what we are feeding our brain, the thoughts and the beliefs. And then physically, we start to see new things in our environment. And I think this is how manifestation makes a bit more sense. When people are like, wow, I just got that text from someone. I haven't spoken to them, but I did think about them last night. You're more alert to it. You're more aware. You see different opportunities. So from the scientific perspective, they're the two kind of streams that I think people need to understand to realize that there is a scientific process to manifesting, and manifesting, really, you could call it achieving your goals if you prefer. You don't have to use the word manifesting.
That's really interesting. Two things sprang to mind actually when you were saying those two sort of strands. One is you make your own luck. I guess that's another kind of way of looking at it. That's one that's said quite often. Like successful people and think, oh, you're so lucky, but you've put yourself in the right position by obviously taking action in some degree and surrounding yourself by the right people and making your own luck. Definitely something that in the last few years, in particular, my limiting mindset, which we'll get into hopefully, stopped me from doing those things. And once I kind of thought, oh, actually, no, I can do this, weirdly things start happening. So definitely making your own luck is certainly a huge thing. And the other one is, it's actually my wife's favorite phrase that I learned the other day, is you can do anything, not everything.
Yeah.
so like you're saying, there's so many things to do, so many things to think about. You can do anything, and obviously some people are limited in some respects, but you have to pick something. And if you pick something and you kind of will just naturally gravitate towards doing the things to achieve that goal, whether it's for a promotion or whatever, trying to find a new partner, whatever it is, you may not be consciously taking decisions, which I think you should anyway, but even if you didn't, you may kind of just subconsciously start doing some things, open an app that you wouldn't have opened before, simply because you thought about those things previously. Would you say that those two things kind of are less scientific ways of describing it, because potentially my knowledge of the subject less than yours, but those are the two things that sprung to mind when you said that.
Makes total sense. And if anyone hasn't read it, I really recommend the Luck Factor book by Richard Wiseman, where he talks exactly about that. And there's a really poignant example actually, where he talks about someone who goes into a bank just to make their kind of whatever they had to do that day, and there's some kind of bank robbery, some kind of event, and you look at how the person would frame that. The person's got shot in the arm in this example I think he gives, and you've got the lucky person who goes, oh my god, I'm so lucky, I survived, I have minor injuries, how lucky am I that is the outcome of my day. And the other person is like, I knew it. Of course I'd go to that bank. Of course I'd be there at that time. It always happens to me. And it's like, not to diminish negative events happening to people, but how we frame it impacts the decisions we make afterwards. So this is kind of from like cognitive psychology, but there's if you imagine someone, going back to the driving test thing, imagine you fail your first driving test. What do you do? What's your mindset behind that? Do you then go, okay, first time, lots of people fail first time, I now know that I just need to work on this maneuver, I'm going to pass next time, I just need a few more lessons? Or do you go, I knew it, I knew I wouldn't be any good at this, I'm just not the kind of person that's going to be able to drive, I'm never having a driving lesson again, it's all my fault, I've done it all wrong. Same event, but different perspective on it. And I think that concept of, you mentioned like successful people, millionaire mindset, there's something in that, because how we think about things, whether we go, okay, I've had a really crappy day and I'm just going to put it to bed and try again tomorrow, or whether we go, I can't do it, I'm not good enough, impacts how the success we have. It's not about being perfect. You mentioned imposter syndrome at the start. It's not about getting everything right. It's not about never failing. It's about reframing the situation and saying, what can I learn from it? What can I do differently? How can I move forward? And maybe to touch on the second point as well, zoning in on one thing rather than thinking, I have to do 1,000 things today, going, what does success look like for me today in this area? How can I be the best at this thing? And it's okay that I haven't run a marathon today, and I haven't cleaned the house from top to bottom, and I haven't done this and I haven't done that, because I've done this thing really, really well.
But how does somebody who has that kind of limiting mindset, and obviously somebody who seeks out the information you put out online and the kind of tools that you give people, the people who don't do that and are stuck in this kind of limited mindset, and they are thinking, oh, everything bad, of course, happens to me, everything, I don't have any luck, I'm going to be stuck in this minimum wage job for my entire life. People who have that mindset, and I come across them regularly, especially on TikTok, which is an awful comment section. Like, people just should not leave comments on TikTok. It's an awful place. But so often, because of the nature of the videos that I create about money, and I know, I mean, I've been there before where I did not think I could earn more money, and now I've applied the things that I've learned and have the ability to do so. I know it's possible. I know, and I'm not special. I'm not, super intelligent. I don't have any set of skills that other people can't learn.
Yeah.
But when I put a video out explaining, you can earn more money, like it's not even about becoming ultra. It's not even like an Andrew Tate style video where you got to become a million, ultra millionaire driving Lamborghinis. It's not even about that. It's just, look, if you just consistently do something, you can improve the skills, you can earn more money, and you don't have to spend your life worrying about money. But so many comments are left saying, "Wow, you don't know what it's like. I've had this X happen, whatever the event is in my life that's preventing me from doing that. You don't know what it's like geographically where I live. There's always these factors that put in place. How does somebody change their mindset? Because for me, it took a negative event that I span into a positive event, and that was getting into so much debt that I was stuck in a corner and was forced to learn how to dig my way out. And then that kind of snowballed into me learning about money and then creating content about money. So I kind of took that negative event, and it wasn't even really conscious for me to get where I am now, but it happened because of that one positive step that I took off the back of being cornered. Does it take generally somebody to get cornered and be put in a really difficult position to take action, do you think? Or is there something that somebody can do that is just kind of stuck in a rut that can then kind of start snowballing?
That's a really great question. And I would agree with the first part of that actually, for a lot of people, change happens when it absolutely has to happen.
Mm.
People who are in bad relationships stay in it when it's okay. And then when it's really bad, that's when they go, okay, I'm done now. We need to separate, we need to move on. And I think that is because we don't like change. As a human being, we like to hold on to our core beliefs, who we are as a person, what we know, even if that is uncomfortable. So we have something, or there are things called secondary gains. So a secondary gain is when we don't change a behavior because we perceive on a subconscious level it's benefiting us. So if you think about the people in the TikTok comments, you are sharing advice that would help them, but they would need to change on some level. Now, I'm not necessarily saying consciously, but sometimes subconsciously, their mindset is saying that change doesn't feel safe. That doesn't feel right for us. So as a way of understanding that, the comments might come back as, you don't understand what it's like for me, you don't know my situation, because the idea of change feels uncomfortable. And if I just give an example of that around money, so a lot of the time we have built up beliefs that money is bad, rich people are negative, that it's not great to have money because either your friends will leave you because they'll think, oh, well, they're rich now, they're not like us. That not being part of a group thing is really, really important, because we are wired to want to feel safe and want to feel part of a group. Now, logically and consciously, I think most people would say, of course I want more money, of course I want that. But remember, we've got two parts of our brain. We've got the frontal lobe, which is the logical, conscious part. And then we've got this reptilian and limbic system that isn't logical, it's not rational, it is just wired for safety and survival. And sometimes the change part that we're talking about triggers that reptilian complex to not feel safe because it feels different. Just the idea of having to act differently around money could make the subconscious feel like that's not safe. That's not gonna benefit us, when logically we know it would. So I come across a lot of people who've either been taught by parents, guardians, that rich people are evil. That's a really big statement. If you imagine someone is trying to make more money, they're trying to get out of debt, they're trying to grow their assets, or whatever that might be, and that's their logical brain. Imagine if their programs, their subconscious is saying, rich people are evil. It's bad to have money. Our family won't like us. Our friends won't like us anymore if we have money, because we'll become that thing that they don't like. Not logical, not conscious, but remember, your subconscious is so powerful, it's going to then create reasons why you don't make those changes. So I think on one level, people like to stay where they are because it feels safe and secure, and it's not necessarily conscious. It is driven by that survival safety part. And then to touch on the second bit of what you were saying, I think when we get into an extreme circumstance, it's a bit like a kickstart. It's a bit like the person who suddenly stops smoking because they have a health scare and then go, oh, okay, I can't do this anymore. It's that feeling of now something has to change. But for anyone listening to this, all I would say is, all you need to have is a feeling of, I think it's possible that I could change. If someone came to me in a one-to-one session and was like, yeah, my husband, wife, partner has said I need to come to you because I need to change, sort of alarm bells are going off a little bit, and I'm going to do some probing to be like, what do you want from this? Why do you want to change? Because ultimately, if someone says, oh, I don't want to, you're not going to change someone. Someone in TikTok who's watching a video, if they don't want to change their money habits, they're not going to. But just having a feeling of, I think I could, it's possible, but I need help, is all you need. That sort of open mindset. And then from there, we can do lots of work on BWRT, hypnosis, reframing. It's just having that initial kind of, well, someone else has done it, so why couldn't I do it too?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that totally resonates with me. I think that's almost the beauty of the internet to a degree. There's a lot of downsides to it for sure, TikTok being a big one. But seeing this information from people who seems hopefully more relatable than, you know, previously maybe somebody like, I don't know, Robert Kiyosaki and all these people who are so obviously richer than most people are ever going to be, getting sort of financial advice or any kind of advice that relates to making more money. You know, you have to buy a course of theirs or have to attend a seminar, anything, or it's obviously a load of nonsense, I'm going to get scammed. Having everyday-ish people creating content online that can kind of nudge people in the direction of, oh, I'll give that a go. Like one of the biggest ones that sorry, my camera's just died. One of the biggest sort of motivators that I've had from sort of people in DMs saying that actually some of the videos that you've done that have helped me have been from things like pensions that are like, people kind of know about it, but don't know enough. It seems more relatable than me saying like, oh, you can become a millionaire by investing. People go, your brain switches off. No, scammy. It doesn't seem real. They go, actually, look, workplace pension, pretty much everyone in the UK has got one. That is investing, and then that's a kind of route in to be like, oh, maybe this isn't a scam, and then you can kind of nudge in that way, and then they start absorbing more information. So it's kind of is that little nudge. So I totally resonate with that. And
do you want to know a little bit of more science of the science around why that kind of is a thing as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm hoping you're going to say yes. If you'd said no, I'm going to tell you anyway. So sorry about that. Right, we have something in our brains called mirror neurons, and mirror neurons help us to empathize and understand. So if you've ever been in a scenario where someone near you is being sick and you suddenly feel your stomach kind of going, or if you're watching a program and you know it's not real, but you start to feel emotional because the character's feeling emotional, it's because your mirror neurons are being activated, and they are the parts of your brain that are going to ever so slightly stimulate you to feel that same emotion. So it helps us to be social creatures. What that then means is for things like what you were describing, when we tell our story or when people watch our videos or listen to podcasts and they can empathize or understand or feel a bit like, oh, I'm a bit like him, or I'm a little bit like her, it triggers the mirror neurons to be active and gives us that feeling of, oh, maybe I could do it too. So this is why I think one of the great things about the internet is there is such a diverse range of people. So you are going to be able to find someone who you resonate with, who you say is a bit like me. My story is the same. And then as a result, that message is going to land differently because your brain is feeling like this makes more sense. It might be that people who watch my videos go, oh my God, I love cats too, or I'm obsessed with pink, or something really kind of lighthearted and superficial. But actually, on a brain level, there's this kind of element of bonding, which means that they listen to what I'm saying in a slightly different way. So there's always some science behind this stuff. But you're right, feeling like, okay, well, that like I'm a completely normal person. There's nothing special about me. But if I say, oh, well, I wrote a book about this, or I've got this podcast, people can go, well, maybe I can do it too. It just makes it accessible.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Because like you said earlier, we as humans like to feel as part of a group, don't we? Whatever group that is, whether you think you have group mindset or not, you do. It could be anything, couldn't it? This whether it's politically or even on the people you follow on TikTok, you kind of align with those people. I'm the kind of person who listens to Stephen Bartlett's podcast. So anyone he has, I'm going to listen to and believe. So totally, that makes perfect sense. So I want to go back to imposter syndrome because I'm actually fascinated with it, and I have tried to do a bit of research, but I'm intrigued as to why I've always suffered with it and still do. What sort of psychologically are the reasons for imposter syndrome? And because I know most people suffer with it.
Oh yeah.
What would you say is the biggest sort of cause from your knowledge?
I would say a lot of it comes down to perfectionism. And people may disagree with me on this, but I think we live in a world where we are sort of taught that we should be perfect, we should be amazing, we should achieve more and more and more. And don't get me wrong, I think you've got to grow, you've got to keep going. But I think with that comes a feeling of you've got to be the best, you've got to do everything. And therefore, we get ourselves in situations where we perceive, because we're so in our own minds, that everyone else has got everything together and we're the one that's failing. And we can sometimes have this feeling of, I'm going to get found out. Even if I've got 10 degrees, someone's going to turn around and say, yeah, but can you recite pi to 15 digits? No, okay, you're out. And there's that worry of not being good enough, not having it all together. I think it was Marissa Peer said something about imposter syndrome being like running a race where there's no finish line. So you're never going to get a feeling of satisfaction. You're never going to feel like, yeah, I've made it. Yeah, I'm great at what I do. Because there's always something new you could learn. There's always a new book you could read. You're always going to speak to someone that's going to say, oh, have you heard about this theory of investing? And you're going to go, oh, I haven't. And instead of saying, oh, that's really interesting, it plays into that confirmation bias we have of not being good enough. And if you haven't heard of confirmation bias before, it's the idea that we don't want our brains, or sorry, our brains don't want us to be proved wrong. So when we have a belief, for example, let's use the I'm not good enough, you could have 100 people lined up in front of you. The first 99 could say, you're amazing, you're incredible, you're so successful, we think you're amazing, brilliant, fabulous. The last person might go, not really sure. And your brain hones in on that and says, I knew it, that confirms it, that's what we're going to focus on. So when we're suffering from things like imposter syndrome, it's almost like we're looking for examples. We're looking for a podcast episode to not do very well, or we're looking for another piece of content that someone else has put out, and we think, I should have said it like that. They've said it better than me. Versus noticing all the things we're succeeding in, noticing all the things we're doing. It's a bit like what I said at the start about how we create our own reality based on the beliefs we feed it. It's very common to have that feeling of not good enough, not perfect, going to get found out because someone's going to go, oh, I thought you were good at what you do and you're not. But then the confirmation bias bit comes in so that we notice every tiny little thing that fits it and we ignore all of the great things we're doing. Does that kind of give you a little bit of an insight to it?
Yeah, and as you're saying, any job I've ever done, any proper job, because I technically don't do a proper job now, but any sort of job that I've done previously, I have always tried to be the best, always. And in some of my jobs, I have achieved that, as in objectively, whatever it is. But I have quite an obsessive personality in that sense as well. So I don't know whether they go hand in hand, but I very much, if I find a topic interesting, or it's the very reason why I create content about money, because I absorb so much content daily, even still after about 4 years of starting my kind of money journey, if you want to call it that. I still absorb so much information because my brain is just like, I need to know everything I possibly can about this. And I've done that at every job I've ever worked in, to try, not even necessarily to try and work my way up to be, the highest managerial position. That's never really been my achievement, but I'll find a niche and I go, I want to be the best at that. So I'll just put what I believe more time and effort into that thing than I think anyone else is doing to try and become the best at it. But then I always feel like when it comes to, I don't know, promotion, for example, very often my instinct is that I can think of 2 jobs I've been in where I've been offered a promotion and my instinct is, I don't want to do it.
Interesting. Can I kind of put my coaching hat on and say,
do it?
What drives that? What drives that feeling of, oh, I don't want to do it?
Not feeling good enough. Even though I've put so much time and effort into being good at what I did, I like being the better version of what I'm at, rather than, I think, jumping up a level, not feeling worthy of it potentially, and then sort of being surrounded by people who are better than me. And then, even though which seems counterintuitive, because then I would again probably like to achieve being good at that thing. But my instinct, even still to this day, is I force myself away from it now because I'm very aware and conscious of it. Or I try to anyway. But if I get offered a really good opportunity, which luckily, based on what I do now and the internet, I actually do get quite a lot of opportunities. But I still, to this day, even if there's an opportunity that comes my way, that takes me slightly out of my comfort zone, I sometimes just say, no, I'm okay, thanks, even though I know I should do it.
Yeah. And I think that word comfort zone is really important, because comfort zone to your subconscious. I mean, if anyone's playing a drinking game and they hear me say subconscious, they're going to be very drunk by the end of this episode. I do apologize. But it's so important, because it's driving so much of what we do. Your subconscious, in that sense, when you're in your comfort zone, knows it's safe, because it's the status quo. It's what you're doing all the time. It's like, yeah, we can keep doing this. This is
Yeah.
safe. We understand what it is. When it's something different, which in the examples you're giving is promotion or expansion or something
Mm.
bigger, your subconscious doesn't have a program for that yet. And because it doesn't know what it is, it automatically presumes it's not safe, because it's not
Yeah.
known. And this is another reason why people stay in difficult mindsets, difficult situations. Logically, they know they want to get out of it, but the change part feels uncomfortable because the subconscious doesn't have a program for that yet. We know that being out of debt would feel so much better, but the fact that it's unknown could be unsafe. So for you, the promotion bit, it's like, I'd rather be the big fish in the small pond, because I
Mm.
know what each day looks like. I feel confident. I know what
Yeah.
my actions are going to be. That feels safe. The step up is unknown. We could be worse off, and we don't want to lose. Psychologically, we don't want to be worse off. A
Mm.
bit like if you've just purchased something and then the next day you see there's a 50% off sale. You're fuming because you're like, if I just waited, I could have saved, because you feel like you've lost something.
Mm.
Don't like to feel like we've lost. And if anyone again is listening to this and thinking about the imposter syndrome stuff, I'd sort of suggest having a look at what your upbringing was around success. Because I mean, stereotypically, if you think about primary school, what are we taught about? Who's going to be top of the class? Who's going to get the best mark in maths? Who's going to run the 100 meters the fastest? We might recognize the first, the second, and the third. You know, there's a bronze, a silver, and a gold. But what about the child who came last time and now they're second to last and they've progressed and they've worked? Don't really talk about that. And I
Mm.
think this idea of being the best, being the top of your class, being the one in your family who earns the most, or whatever it might be, because it'll be completely different for everyone, is sort of ingrained in us. And that's quite an uncomfortable feeling, because not everyone can be the best at something. We're forgetting about personal progress, and we're forgetting about what matters to us as individuals, and going, okay, I've got to be the best at it. But why? Like,
Mm.
where does that come from? What have we been taught? What have we learned? Is it something that was praised? Is it like school reports? Great, you got an A. Well, what about if you got an E last time and now you've got a C? Like, isn't that
Yeah.
better? So just kind of digging into that a little bit. And I don't know if any of that resonates with
Mm.
you based on what we've been talking about.
Yeah, the way you described it is like a different program that you kind of don't you've never played before in your brain. So you kind of it's unknown, so it's not safe. That's definitely something that I think has played a part in it. It seems like I don't know, it's too complicated. I'm not going to be good enough at it, so I kind of no, I'm just going to shy away from it. That's definitely, I think, a lot of people
Yeah.
suffer. I mean, I'm lucky that my I know they say just the best couples are completely opposite, but my wife is the complete opposite. I'm more introverted, she's more extroverted, and she's very much just take risk, take risk. I can do it. I believe I can do anything. So she's always pushed me to do, like, I don't know. Years ago when we first met, I was a bartender, and when I used to be a TGI Friday, so we used to do competitions and stuff like that. And I used to be, I mean, I was a good bartender at the time, but there was a competition coming up, and I'd be like, no, I'm not going to do it. She would force me to do it. I did it, and then I won. So I wouldn't have done it had she not pushed me. So I think it's really important. I mean, this is completely off topic from money, really, but as far as relationships go, I think opposites do attract in that sense, because I think you need somebody in your life, and maybe it's not even your partner, maybe it's your, I don't know, your parents or your sibling or something, somebody to go, no, you need to do that. You need somebody to kind of push out. And I think the people who don't have that are the ones that get stuck potentially their entire lives doing the same thing. And I always think that's really sad.
Yeah, because money mindset is often from what our parents were taught and
Mm.
learned. And I think there's a lot of shame, guilt, and negative emotions often surround money. And whenever I talk about, what we've grown up with, I always say, but remember, our parents were doing the best they could do based on the information they had and what their parents were taught, and society and all of that. And it's very true that we have these kind of cyclic relationships often, meaning if our parents say, oh, are you sure you want to do that? Oh, are you sure that's safe? Shouldn't you go and get a nice safe job versus starting a business? That's often a common one.
Yeah.
Then you think, oh, okay, well, actually, you know, my parents are very important to me. Their opinion matters. You repeat the same habits. Whereas if you've got a friend or a family member that's a bit rogue and thinks of things differently, it can just open your mindset up and go, oh, okay, I never would have thought of it like that. Even things like travel, you know, someone saying, oh, I can't wait to go and explore these places. You might then think, well, I've never thought to go there. What is
Yeah.
it about that culture? What is it about that? And evolutionary wise, we are programmed to be pessimistic. We are programmed to not try new things because it meant things like trying a new berry. Well, that berry could kill you. So it was much safer to say, no, we don't eat from that tree. We'll stick on this tree. And we've all got that as a bit of sort of evolutionary throwback. So having people in your life that can say, well, why don't you try? You know, I don't like the phrase, what's the worst thing that can happen? Because I think you're then focusing on like the worst thing. And people are probably listening going, I could give you 10 things that could happen. But saying, okay, actually, I'll add this in here. A little technique that I teach 95% of my clients is something called what if up. So maybe this is through imposter syndrome, maybe this is money stuff. We're very good at what if down. So saying, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work out? What if I make a mistake? If you notice yourself doing that, I want you to take the what if down and just flip it into a what if up. So, what if I fail becomes, what if I succeed? What if I make a mistake? What if actually it's easier than I thought it was going to be? Just asking yourself the question. You don't have to suddenly go, right, I know I'm going to be a millionaire. Just saying, what if I make some money? What if this is easier than I thought it would be? What if it all works out? And your brain will naturally start to find answers to that and be like, oh, well, actually, it would feel really good. I feel really proud of myself. Oh, I'd feel like I'd succeeded. And just flipping that question, playing the what if up game can get rid of so many limiting beliefs and doubts and allow you to do all the things that you want to do and achieve.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to frame it, because I think once you start, I mean, this goes back to the manifesting and positive mindset stuff like that, but as soon as you have the ability to do that, and I think it does take one thing that you've done that with that works out correctly, or say correctly, better than you thought it was going to, because you've potentially thought about it, potentially doing it, rather than it just happening. You expected the worst, and then the best thing sort of happened. Obviously, I think the best way is to be conservative and prepare for the worst and then hope for the best, which I think is one thing that I've learned in the last few years, especially around money. Things like having an emergency fund so that you can then take risk. And I did a story the other day that I think I probably got one of the most engagement I think I've ever had on Instagram was that exactly that is be conservative, is in with your money, you know, have as little debt, if not no debt as possible, have an emergency fund. And then, you know what, when your job is shit and you don't want to do it anymore, and you're bored of complaining about your boss and how bad you go, oh, actually, I have 3 months worth of pay sitting somewhere in an account. Why don't I just leave? But for most people, the vast majority of people, that doesn't even enter their brain, because they have this, I don't want to call it a limited sort of mindset, but it is in a way. They get stuck. It was very much prior to what I do now. I was in the police. And in the police, it's filled with people who are very skilled at what they do, but feel like they can't do anything else. So like, I bump into police all the time, even still now, who I used to work with, and they're so jealous that I got out. And you know, there's some people that I do know that have got out and say the exact same thing. But the people who stuck in that job, and you can replace police for anything, they feel like they can't leave because they're trapped by a pension, and which isn't even that great anymore, but they feel like it is, so that keeps them in a job. And the second biggest response would be, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? You know, like, you've learned so many good skills in this job. You could go and do so many other things, like, and you would be happier. You would have better sleep and all these other things. I just think that what is that thing that's trapping them? And I know it's, you know, like you said earlier, just continuing to do what you know because it's safe. But I just think it's so sad that once you've kind of gone to the other side where the grass is potentially greener, and you look back and you go, oh, it's so much better here. Like, it's not even silly doing what I'm doing, and my life's amazing because I'm self-employed now. But whatever it is for you that's trapping you and making you feel like miserable, do the other thing. Like, if you really, you know, if it's really that bad on the other side, go back to it. But try it.
Just try it. And I do think it is a safety thing. And, you know, when I started my business, I remember one of my friends going, "Oh, you're so brave." And I was like, "Really? Do you think so?" Because I almost feel a bit guilty that I'm having a great time, but, you know, I get to run my own business and I get to work with these amazing clients. And she kind of saw it as, "Oh, I could never do that." And I was like, "Of course you could. Like, I'm
Mm.
no different to you. Of course you could." But I think it's, yeah, we stay in that same mindset. We like what we know. We have a feeling of like, I'd like to, but is it the book The Big Leap, where I think the picture is like a goldfish jumping out of a fishbowl or something, and it's all about actually having the courage to take the step, but
Mm.
not doing it in a reckless way. So
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying. I probably wouldn't use the phrase like emergency fund, but I would be talking about building abundance so that you can move away from that lack of safety, that
Yeah.
feeling of, because money and fear are massively interlinked. Because I see people that will say, you know, a client might say, right, when I've got, and they might give me a number, and they might say like £10,000 in my bank account, then I will feel like my business is successful. Okay, they get there. And then they go, no, no, sorry, I gave you the wrong number. When I've got £20,000, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, they get there. And I remember vividly a client of mine being like, "Victoria, I'm so bad with money." And I was like, "Tell me about that." And she was talking about it. And I was like, "Okay, tell me about business." And I said to her, like, "Oh, okay, so how much did you make this time last year?" And she gave me a figure. And then I said, "Okay, what about this month?" And she was like, "Oh, well, we've hit 30K in sales this month." And I paused and she was like, "Oh, that's really good, isn't it?" And I was like, "You tell me, is 30K?" And it was that idea that she just hadn't come out of the fear mindset. She was still
Yeah.
living in that sort of, I'm a 19-year-old that's got too many credit cards and can't tell my parents because they'll be like, "Why did you buy all those clothes, you stupid person?" And
Yeah.
actually, she's a successful business owner making 30K in 1 month in sales and yet still feeling like that. And it's so much to do with how we feel, not what we physically have. I've heard you talk about, like, you know, money and stuff and how it's different for everyone, what you want, whether you want to be a millionaire, whether you want investments or whatever. It's not really about what's in your bank account. It's about how you feel as an individual around
Yeah.
money, around success. And this is why I really advocate for working on mindset. I know sometimes people can be like, "Yeah, no, I just want the steps." And I'm going to say, "Okay, well, you can take the actions, but remember that formula from the start with those programs lead to thoughts and feelings which determine your actions, which determine your results." And it's like, okay, stick a plaster on it. Fine, that's okay. But if you want the long-term result, let's go back and reframe and shift and rewire all this yucky stuff that is
Mm.
sat there around how you feel about money, how you feel about yourself, because changing that is going to have the bigger long-term impact. Because then when you're looking at investing or getting promotions or changing jobs, the mindset is completely different. The foundation is different.
Yeah. How long do you think it takes for somebody who has that kind of limiting belief mindset that's stuck in that 19-year-old brain with credit card debt? And you know what? I still, to this day, I still suffer from it. This is turning into a proper counseling session, this.
Yeah, sit
But
back. Let me get my drink. Carry
yeah,
on.
like send me the bill afterwards. But I feel like I struggle to pull the trigger quite often with buying something. So like even if I've got the money set aside, even if I've saved specifically for something, um, I still struggle with that muscle in my brain that I've not trained enough. That like I recently bought a car 2 weeks ago, more money than I've ever spent on a car ever. Um, at secondhand, of course. Anyone listening, don't buy new, don't be silly. So I got a secondhand car, and it was more than £10,000. And if you asked me 4 years ago, never, I could not have ever been able to save up to do that, or b even had the mental maturity to do it, which sounds crazy because I mean, you know, whether £10,000, it is a lot of money to me, but whether it is a lot to you or not, replace that with anything, a big item that's out of the scope of your normal payments. I still really struggle with actually going, I can afford it, let's do it. Even something small like I don't know, if I take my daughter somewhere and she goes, "Oh, can I have that?" And I'd be like, my instinct is no,
Yeah, can't
because
afford it.
my
No.
my brain is still stuck, 10 years ago, where I had no money, I had no savings, I had a really poor mindset around money. So everything is no, 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 no. We have, this is how we live. We can't get anything better. How do people get out of that? Other than maybe, I mean, the way that I've learned that's helped me is literally training their muscle and just learning to, or stopping thinking, going, is this realistic? Yeah, it is. Okay, cool. And then moving forward rather than, but I still instinctively go to no still.
Yeah. And I'm going to say there are long versions and there are short versions. I think what you're describing is that challenging, saying, oh, hang on a minute, I've noticed this belief. Is this actually true? No, we can buy that bar of chocolate or that magazine with the plastic pink thing on the front of it or whatever it is. And that does work because repetition changes your neuroplasticity. So we know that we can change the links we have in our brain. If you imagine a thought is just two neurons, which are your brain cells, sending an electrical message. The more you think a thought, the faster that electrical message gets. It's a bit like, I'm not an electrician, so should I use this analogy? Yeah, we're going to go for it.
I'm not either.
Oh, if you think of like a wire, like a cable of something, it's got like a plastic covering which stops the electrical wires crossing over and sending scattered signals. When you keep thinking a thought, your neuron it doesn't get isolated, gets covered in like a fatty covering, which makes it a really strong connection, which means you automatically think that thought. When you start thinking a different thought, at first, it's like a really slow connection. It's like driving on a country road versus a motorway. You have to go slow, it's a bit bumpy, but you can strengthen it over time. So that's definitely one way. Thinking like you're taking your brain to the gym, you're challenging, you're saying, is this true? No. Can I do this? Yes. What do I want to feel instead? That's 100% one way of doing it. I actually use a technique called Brain Working Recursive Technique. That is, in my opinion, one of the fastest things I've come across. I haven't obviously tried every single technique out there, but it's something I use with my clients. And to answer your question to how fast, I have seen people go from a high anxiety situation, a 9 out of 10, something that makes them feel incredibly emotional, probably tears down their cheeks, to at the end of the session, so an hour session maximum maybe, when I ask them about that memory, them going, oh, that's weird. I don't feel like that anymore. What? And then they're rating it at like a 0. Now I know that sounds like I'm kind of saying, oh, there's this magic pill. This is a technique that's used all the time, day in, day out, and it gets really fast results because it's working where this starts. It's not saying, okay, it's happened, let's challenge it. It's saying, right, this is coming from your reptilian complex. Let's freeze that neural pathway and let's actually divert the focus into how you want to feel instead. So using this process, what we're doing is we're saying, we don't want that thought. That is not adaptive. This is how we want to feel. And this is what it's going to look like. And this is what we're going to be able to do as a result. And you're actually wiring that in. I know it does. I know for anyone who hasn't had BWRT or hasn't experienced it, it might seem a bit too good to be true. But check it out, Google it, look at some of people's testimonials. If you go to my Instagram, actually, I'm at Victoria.Maskell. There's a picture of a woman. You can't necessarily tell it's a woman because it's quite zoomed out, with her arms up in the air like this. And she's on top of this, I'm going to call it a mountain, but it looks quite flat in Norway. My geography is not good. It does say in the post, I wish I knew exactly what it was called. She came to me with a fear of heights, to the point where in the UK, she wasn't able to go on some of these walks with her husband because the anxiety was so crippling. We had a BWRT session and she sent me that photo with her arms in the air being like, I did it. She's not scared of heights.
That's cool.
You know, everyone is different, but I really would say, have a look at some of these techniques out there because they can shift limiting beliefs so quickly.
Yeah. No, it's so true. It's like self-help books and those things that probably most popular in the 90s, where people kind of like self-improvement, but people did do it. It wasn't because of the book. It was because they trained their brain to start thinking and taking action, whether it's waking up at 5 a.m, whatever it is. The thing that was the catalyst for you to do it is just ingraining these new things in your brain. Absolutely. I think that's definitely worked for me. And I think if you're somebody who feels like they're stuck in a rut, I definitely, I mean, I've never heard of, is it BWRT?
BWRT, Brain Working Recursive Therapy. Yeah,
I definitely need to have a look at that because that sounds like something I kind of do badly that could definitely do better.
Yeah, because all doing our best. We're all trying. And I think surrounding yourself with people with different mindsets, like you spoke about, like I've got a friend who's very kind of has always been entrepreneurial from the age of like 15, 16. He'd got like little businesses going. And I sometimes pick his brain and I'm just like, well, what do you think about this? And he was like, yeah, of course, go for it. Yeah, if you do this and this. And for him, it's just very, well, of course you do that. And of course it'll make money. And of course, and I might speak to someone else and they'll say, oh, are you going to do it? Oh, great. Oh, is that going to work? And it's like, oh, okay, different perspectives. And seeking out examples of people who've changed their beliefs, seeking out examples of people like you, seeking out examples of times when people have succeeded, just fills your brain with this, okay, this is possible. I can do this.
Yeah.
And all of that is a great catalyst for change.
So you mentioned hypnosis earlier.
Mm-hmm.
What do you offer that as one of your services? And if you do, how does it work?
Oh, okay. Yes, I do offer it as one of my services. I would say that I do more BWRT than hypnosis purely because of the speed of them. As in BWRT is usually faster than hypnosis.
Yeah.
Hypnosis, I know people are skeptical. I was skeptical before I had it, but I had it because, as I said at the start, incredible, awful panic attacks out of nowhere, last resort, needed to try something. Hypnosis works because we can all get into a natural state of hypnosis. If you watch a film, you're in a state of hypnosis. If you're engrossed in the latest series on Netflix, you're in a state of hypnosis. You just don't realize it. To be honest, when most people are driving, they're in a state of hypnosis. It's not mind control. It's not some kind of magical state. Lots of people say, oh, I can never be hypnotized. Okay, but you're probably in that state naturally anyway. It works because you are giving new suggestions to that part of your mind, the subconscious. Now, you're in a very relaxed state. So it's like, I mean, I've had it quite a lot myself. I personally describe it as focused relaxation. So I'm aware of what's going on, but I'm not thinking about, did I feed the cats? Have I sent that email? What am I having for dinner? All that sort of chatter isn't going on. You just feel really calm and really focused. And it works by putting new ideas, new programs into your subconscious using imagery or certain languages. By languages, I don't mean like French, German, Spanish. I mean like the emotive language is what I mean, because the subconscious deals in pictures and feelings. So I've given the analogy to people before of if they wanted to make more money, the idea of going to a garden and actually preparing the soil and planting seeds and watching them grow. And then using that as like they can cut the weeds away, and the weeds might represent old limiting beliefs, and they're creating something new, and they are investing or they are saving, and the seeds represent that. So the subconscious picks it up as sort of, oh, okay, I can get behind this imagery. Oh, and this relates to money. Okay. And sort of, again, over time, you might have a couple of sessions of this. You're building this imagery up. You're creating new ideas. And that's how hypnosis works. Like, if people haven't looked into it, there are some amazing, like, fascinating stories of hypnosis where people have had suggestions of having like burns on their skin, and these burns suddenly appear out of nowhere, and then another suggestion of the skin healing, and the skin just heals. And I mean, I've never gone down that route myself, but there is some, if you think about how our subconscious mind is alert and awake every single second of our entire life, because it keeps our heart beating, it keeps us breathing, it regulates our hormones and our temperature. It does some incredible stuff. If we could guide that, just imagine what we could create. And I think it's another sort of untapped resource.
Absolutely. Well, my only experience, I've never been hypnotized. I've been to Darren Brown a couple of times.
Yeah, that's good.
Love it. I mean, how much? I mean, he says it's all true, and I believe him.
Yeah.
My wife recently got hypnosis for eating chocolate, because she felt like she had an unhealthy relationship with eating chocolate like every day. So she went, and it was all about association with negative stuff. So I think the guy who did it with her got her to think of a chocolate bar and like put a really disgusting smell under her nose, and then got her to associate chocolate with that. And I mean, that was like 6-7 months ago. She hasn't had chocolate since, and she was somebody who had it all the time. So I've seen firsthand it definitely can work. But I guess it's picking what would work. Does it work with things like drinking alcohol, smoking?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The stop smoking stuff actually is so the first thing I trained in was hypnotherapy,
Mm,
and stop smoking stuff is one of my favorite things to do because it has such a powerful impact on people. Because
mm,
most of the time, well, certainly when people come to someone like me, they really want to stop smoking, but they've built up this idea that it's addictive, that it's really hard, that they can't stop, and actually giving someone the power to break that and become a natural non-smoker, amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, and
I
I
bet.
I just think if we buy into the idea that our mind is really clever and that our mind is really powerful, then we can unlock so much good stuff. Whether it is saying, I don't want to eat chocolate in the same way, or whether it's I want to stop smoking, or whether it's, I don't know, I want to overcome my fear of flying and actually travel
Mm,
the world. There's so much we can do. Um, and actually, I don't know what your wife thought, but because every type of hypnosis is slightly different, but it can be so relaxing. It
mm,
can be so kind of energizing. It can be a great experience. And no pocket watches, no when I click my fingers.
yeah,
Like Darren Brown's, I've seen him a couple of times as well. And I think my understanding is he uses the concepts of suggestibility a
yeah,
lot. So I don't know if it was the same sort of thing when you went, but he got the audience. I don't know if we had to pretend that we were stuck to our chairs, and then he said,
yeah,
stand up. And
yeah,
then
yeah,
he picks from the people who stand up.
but yeah,
We all have different levels of suggestibility. And I think the fact that he can get someone to sit in an ice bath and their heart rate can be normal.
mm,
And then as soon as he brings them out of hypnosis, their heart rate skyrockets because they're suddenly in. That just shows the power of the mind. You can't fake that. So
absolutely.
actually, I think I'm sure some of it is for TV and extra,
Sure.
whatever. Of course it is because it's a show. But
Mm,
the key core concept of it is we can control our mind in certain ways. And how
mm.
amazing would that be if we could use that to our advantage?
Oh, definitely. But that so when it to bring it back to money, that suggestibility element of it and the openness to absorb something new or to try something new, I think is the biggest thing that's preventing people from changing the situation. But what do you think? Obviously, you're a all the things that you've spoken about that you do with manifestation, things like that, but you specialize in money and money mindset.
Yeah.
What do you think, from your experience, is like the biggest limiter for people when it comes to not becoming wealthy? And I don't mean a millionaire. I just mean somebody who's not living payday to payday, somebody who feels like they actually can get to a situation where they are on top of and in control of the money. What would you say are like the sort of main things that stop people?
I was going to say, I think I'd find it really hard to say one thing, but I would say there's a combination of being told that either money is evil, that it's not okay to want money, or that you don't deserve it. So I remember working with someone who was growing her business and it was going quite well, but she was noticing that she was capping herself. And we sort of did a little bit of digging. And it turns out that I think her mother in law is a nurse. And she just loved her mother in law. And she said she works so hard. She does such an incredible job and she gets paid a tiny amount
Mm,
in comparison to what I'm getting. And she said, it almost doesn't feel fair. I don't feel like I deserve to earn this amount. I certainly don't feel like I deserve to earn any more because there she is actually having, in her words, like a positive impact. And
yeah.
this feeling of like, I don't deserve it. It's not, I'm not allowed to have more. I've got enough. There are people that don't have enough to pay their bills to kind of feed their children.
Mm,
Why should I be allowed to have more? That sort of guilt feeling, and which obviously could also be linked to our parents' upbringing. Meaning, and what I mean by that is, imagine that you suddenly become the kind of person who makes, again, numbers are irrelevant, but a
mm,
hundred grand a year, £1 million a year, £50,000 a year, and that's not what the rest of your family have. The feeling of they won't like me anymore, they'll think I'm different, goes back to not feeling part of something, not being loved. And I think there's some really deep kind of limiting beliefs around that definitely hold people back. Like money is the root of all evil is that
mm,
phrase we've all heard, or money doesn't grow on trees. Just that concept of, well,
mm,
there isn't money everywhere. Well,
mm,
actually, the idea, kind of, as in, I don't know if you've read the Science of Getting Rich, the Wallace Wattles book. Have you
No,
heard
I've
of
not.
it?
I've not.
I mean, shameless plug, but I've written my version of it. The manifestation version of the
Science of
21st
Getting
century.
Rich. I'm
There
going
you
to read
go.
it.
I love it's a really, really good book. The reason I've written a version of it is because it's written in 1910. And obviously, the perspective of how we make money now is completely different. You've got 7-year-olds on YouTube making millions of pounds reviewing toys.
Mm.
That wasn't a thing in 1910 when he wrote the book. But one of the things that really stood out for me was he was saying, and I think he writes from quite a religious perspective, actually, but he was saying, look, if you make more money, you expand the universe, you expand yourself, and you create opportunities for other people to make money. So let's say you're listening to this and you want to start a business and your business grows, you make more money. You can then hire people. That gives other people the opportunity to make money. But not only that, that gives other people the opportunity to go, wow, he's done it. Wow, she's done it. Maybe I could. And actually, when we look at money in a really expansive way, saying it's safe to have more because then I can do more, I can impact more, I can help people more. I've got then more time, more freedom to spend with my family or to work in my community or whatever. Money actually takes a whole different spin, away from it being greedy and negative and taking, it suddenly becomes it's a tool. I can then use that tool. If I'm a quote unquote good person, I might choose to use that tool to help other people or help my own family or invest in my family's future or,
Mm.
my community or whatever it is. If I'm a quote unquote not good person, might make different decisions, but it's not about the money. So I think to sort of answer the question properly,
Mm.
those two areas that hold people back are the guilt, I don't deserve it, other people need it more, I don't do anything that's worthy of more money, and the money doesn't grow on trees, there's not enough to go around, money is evil kind of thing
Mm.
combined, I think are the two biggest blocks that I see.
Yeah, definitely. The idea of um, money not being abundant, I think, is one that is probably the one I come across the most. This idea that it's like when you earn your salary, you're taking the slice of the pie. There's money's finite, and what I earn is taken away from somebody else's potential earnings. When really, no, there's actually infinite numbers of pies, especially as the government continue to print money. But that's a different subject.
Yeah.
But the money is ever growing, and the more you, like you said, the more value you provide, actually you're adding to the pots rather than taking a bit away from somebody who could potentially earn more. And I think that leads in quite well to people who think the rich are bad people, greedy people. Whether you think billionaires should exist or not, they do, and they did it from providing value at sort of mass scale. And people, if you looked at Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk back when they were multimillionaires and not billionaires, you would have gone, oh yeah, they're pretty successful guys. Look at all these jobs they're creating. Whereas now the general consensus, again, probably more on TikTok than anywhere else, but people are like, well, billionaires shouldn't exist. All they're doing is exploiting people, blah, 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 but completely discounting all the innovation they've created. I mean, ironically, it's normally on an iPhone or using some sort of internet provided by satellites that, Elon Musk put into space. But all these things, all this value they've created, this hatred towards, again, and links probably to the group sort of mindset of, I am poor. All my mates are poor. We work, the jobs that the poor people do. So we've got this kind of community. They are the other. They must have done something wrong to get to that level.
Yeah, I think whatever we're going to call rich is, we have this perspective of what it means to be rich or what it
Yeah.
means to be poor. And I think and I've seen this on kind of YouTube and social media a lot, when people are influencers and their job appears to be they make videos about makeup or clothes or travel or they get free holidays, that gets a lot of pushback around. There was a YouTuber who had a health event, for want of a better word, and had to take a week off, so didn't post 3 videos. The next video was full of, we can't take time off, you make all this money, why couldn't you do your videos? And it's like, whoa, hang on a minute, what is this saying about? I think we have a feeling of, I have to work hard and graft for money. So therefore, when we see people, what we presume as not working hard or not our definition of hard, it feels unfair. And
Yeah.
that's not a nice feeling. It's like, it's not fair. But then we put, rather than saying, this is like the reframing again, rather than going, wow, maybe I'd like a piece of that. Maybe I'd like to be able to do something that means I get more time or freedom or whatever it is. We go, or people go, I should say, that's not fair. You're not working hard enough. You don't deserve it. When actually, probably that person would want to be doing something similar. And I see a lot of criticism around if someone who is wealthy supports a charity, rather than people going, okay, that's a nice thing to do. Often it gets, well, why that charity? Or why are you doing this? Are you telling us just to justify your wealth? But then if wealthy people don't publicize it, it's you don't help anyone else out. It's all about you. And there's just so much negativity and so much criticism. And I think it probably comes that from every single one of us would love to have success, freedom, time. And if we don't feel like it's possible for us, that doesn't feel comfortable. There's like a cognitive dissonance. So we push back on it. And yeah, TikTok comments are one of those key places where people do that.
And you always focus on the negative ones. You know, you can get 100 positive comments, and the one negative one will ruin your day. It's so true. And anyone who doesn't create content may not fully internalize that, but it's so true. You really do focus on the negativity. It's not good. This leads me on to another question, and I think I know your answer anyway, but do you think it's moral to be super rich? Let's say billionaire, to put a number on it. Is it moral? Yeah, that's the question. Do you think it's moral to be a billionaire?
This is a question I've never been asked in terms of moral to be a billionaire. If you'd said it slightly differently, like, is it safe to want to be wealthy? I would be like 100%. Is it okay to be rich? 100%. I even created an episode on can money buy you happiness, which is another sort of controversial area. And my answer is yes, indirectly, because actually having a pot of money does not make you happy, does not make you healthy, does not make you whatever. And therefore not having money doesn't mean that you're not happy and healthy and all the rest of it. But money can be used as a facilitator. If we look at some of the reasons why people's relationships break down or they suffer from stress, or money anxiety is a huge part of that. So if you've got money, often that allows you to reduce your stress, which means then your relationships can be better. It gives you time to work on your body, to eat properly. You have physically the money to buy food. You have the time to go and walk in nature, to meditate, to do all of these things. So if you were asking me that question, I would be saying yes. I feel like, okay, I'm going to be honest and say, I feel like I don't know enough about what it physically means to be a billionaire to answer the question honestly, but my gut instinct is saying, why not? Because if we create more billionaires, aren't we creating, like you were saying, more opportunities, more jobs, more success, more expansion? And if we live in an expansive universe, surely that means things are getting better and we're developing. So I think that's where I sit. I suppose the only reason I'm hesitating is I don't know if there is direct negative impacts of there being billionaires.
I'm sure there is. I think there's. I think in many situations that are positive, there is going to be some indirect negative. And exploiting people on minimum wage may be one of those things as a result of, call it capitalism, which I'm all for. I think capitalism is the best system that human beings have come up with to lift people out of poverty and create as much opportunity for people as possible.
Yeah.
I tend to agree, because that seems to be a big pushback a lot on social media. Is there should not be, one person should not have accumulated that much resources in one place. Therefore, they should get taxed so heavily to distribute that wealth. So I do understand that argument. But then the more, especially being self-employed, I've now understood what you put in is what you get out. And that isn't necessarily the hours I work is what I get out, because when you're in a 9 to 5 PAYE job, that tends to be what it is. You clock in, you get paid for the hours, you leave. If you want more, you got to do overtime. Whereas you can't really scale. You can when you're self-employed. There are ways of scaling business by doing the same amount of hours, but increasing your income by doing certain things. These billionaires have just figured out a way of doing that at insane levels of scale.
That's it. There was another TikToker, I imagine. I only watched it briefly, but the guy was like, look, this is how to become a millionaire. And what as far as I'm remembering it, he was saying, start something that gets you to say 10K a month. And then he was like, don't then double that and aim for 20K a month. He was like, find a way of making that same money, but taking yourself out of it so that it runs on autopilot, so that then you can start another project, get that to 10K, and then do the same thing. He was like, you are one person. You do not want to be in a position where you're having to work from 6 a.m. till midnight every single day just to get the business or whatever it is working. And it's like, again, I think it's a different mindset. Rather than saying, I work on an hourly rate, so I do as many hours as I can to make as much money as I can, it's like, make your money work for you. Work smarter, not harder. Let's move away from success is just being the person who sacrificed the most. There's so many potential shifts. And yeah, I suppose the billionaire side of things, it's like, what if they halved that? Where could that money go, and how could it impact other people? But are they inspiring? Are they creating innovation? Are they creating expansion by being where they are? And yeah,
absolutely. I think the UK has a very different culture to the US. I think the US are very much, the land of the free. You can be whatever you want to be. Go and get it. So I think they've got it more right in that aspect. I think because in the UK we are so conservative, and so hard work is, 9 to 5 or 9 to 7 or 9 to 8, whatever it is. That grind is the thing that's great. Keep doing that. That is hard work. Whereas I think in America, entrepreneurship and starting business and first, second generation families that come from, from other countries have gone, right, no, I've come here to make a life for myself. Where in the UK, I think we lack that. I think that is quite often the sort of stem to why people hate rich people, because they see that success, that sort of tall poppy syndrome of like, no, how is he doing better than me? That's bullshit. I work harder than him. No, he's obviously cheated. He must have done something wrong.
It's not fair feeling like, hang on a minute, I'm doing what I should be doing. I'm working really hard. He doesn't deserve more than me, or she doesn't deserve that. And I think it can take quite a lot of reframing to go, what if? And I feel like from my limited circle, quite a few of my friends are moving away from the sort of 9 to 5, get in work early, work later, and they're shifting into I want to spend a bit more time. I don't know if the 2020 era, I don't know if we should say the word, shifted things a bit, but just having a bit more time at home, going for a walk, actually taking some time in the middle of your day to exercise. People were like, oh, I can do this. I've got friends and clients who have a therapy session or a coaching session in the middle of their workday because they're able to shuffle things around differently. And I hope we're moving towards I'm going to say this the wrong way around. I was going to say work to live and live to work. I don't really mean that. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Sort of focusing on what really matters, quality time, health, well-being, not just I'm the person who put in the most hours in my job this week, therefore I'm going to get a badge, because unfortunately that badge doesn't exist. The worked the hardest, sacrificed the most isn't an award I think anyone wants. And often in jobs, you then get given more to do because you're more efficient. And yet you don't get more out for that. And, everyone has their own perspectives on it. But personally, that doesn't really work for me.
Yeah, I think there's a time and a place for grinding and working out. And being self-employed, if you think, hopefully I'm not glamorizing being self-employed, because it is bloody hard work, depending on what you do, of course. But if you want to actually build something, it requires you to put in those extra hours, but you're doing it for you and you're not doing it for some big corporation. So there's benefits in that sense, but that's not sustainable. It has to be, for a short period of time to, in the long run, give yourself some flexibility. I mean, like I now can get my daughter from school pretty much every single day, yet work around it. And yes, sometimes I work late into the evening and whatever, but actually I do have that flexibility. And I understand fully. I mean, people in the NHS, for example, you can't just pick and choose when you work. You got to be there. Totally understand that. And that's not achievable for some people. But I think for a lot of people, they need to try and find that balance in some way, shape, or form. And I really do totally agree with you that it's mindset. It really is.
Yeah.
So what would you say? So I appreciate I've taken up a lot of your time, so thank you. But what would you say is the biggest tip you could give somebody who is struggling with a limited belief and they want to improve their money mindset? What would you say, if there was one thing you could distill down to, what would you say to somebody who feels like they do have some negative thoughts around money, or I appreciate there's probably a lot of different things that you could say to different things, but somebody who feels like there is a bit of a glass ceiling to their thoughts around money, what's one thing actionable that somebody could do?
Okay, yeah, it is. I kind of want to give 10 things, but what I would say is focusing on the concept that they have neuroplasticity and they can change their mindset, even if in that moment it's not going to change in that day. Holding on to this is going to change, it is going to get better, is I think the first thing that we need to do. And then maybe from that, looking at areas of their life that they've changed. So did they used to be a really messy person and now they're quite organized? Focusing on something like that, even though it's not related to money, it shows them that they have changed something in their life, which then reminds them that that change is possible. It gives them evidence to then go, okay, how do I want to be around money? Like just asking yourself that question. Okay, if I could write it out, if I was going to be an excellent money manager, which is a phrase I quite like to use,
Mm.
what does that actually look like? Because sometimes we know that we want to change, but we don't know what that change looks like. So writing it out in terms of how they want to be, because maybe that person doesn't want to be a millionaire or a billionaire. Maybe they don't want to run their own business. Maybe they just want to feel like it's okay to spend money. Or maybe the opposite way around. They don't want to be emotionally spending and getting that spender's remorse. They actually want to feel a bit calmer with money. Write it out. How do you think about money? How do you talk about money? How do you feel about money? How do you spend it? As if this is something that you're creating. So reminding yourself that change is possible and actually setting out how you want things to be, I think is the first place to start for
Mm.
anyone who knows they have some money limiting beliefs or wants to shift things in a positive direction.
I like that. It reminded me of, as you're talking then, saying about being an excellent money manager, this idea that treat treat your money and your situation, and this doesn't have to be money. I think any situation where you need to kind of improve yourself in some way, is how would you treat, your friend or family member that's in that situation? What advice would you give them? And it also reminds me of Dave Ramsey's approach to it, because obviously he's very religious in the way that his viewpoint of money and how he delivers it. But the idea that he talks about, and I'm not religious, as I said previously, but you're managing God's money. So that idea of like, God's given you this money, he's allowed you to, so you kind of, this isn't your money, you are managing somebody else's money. And I think that's quite a powerful idea, because it makes you more responsible. I would imagine, if you view this as, oh, okay, like if you are the CFO of a company, or if you've been given a bunch of money to look after that to your family members, you're going to feel more responsible. Oh God, I need to make the right decisions here. I'm going to think through what I need to do with it, rather than you get a bonus at work and you go, yeah, I'm going to go and buy that thing that I've always wanted, that actually is a bit frivolous. Thinking of it as somebody else's money, whether it's God's money or your family member's money or your friend's money, or giving them advice, that kind of removes you from the situation and makes you make less impulsive, the reptilian part of your brain making that decision. You're bringing it forward to the frontal lobe.
Oh, yeah, you're on it. You're a brain scientist.
Hey, who needs a degree? But yeah, you're making that more kind of conscious decision where you're going, actually, I'm going to do the right thing. And I think if people can apply that in some way, shape, or form to their money by just using that sort of simple trick of removing themselves and pretending like it's somebody else's money, I think it's a great way of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like even just today, I was talking to a group of people about we're going to have Me Time May, because we have this group call, and we were just talking about how most people are really good at doing something for someone else.
Yeah.
So if someone says, I need something, most of us are pretty good at doing that.
Yeah.
We're not very good at saying, I need something and I want something. And I think that's true with money in that example, that suddenly if that money doesn't become ours, it's an entity's or someone else's, we can step back and go, okay, what's the best decision here versus what's the emotion, what's the numbing I need to do, or what's the fear-based decision I'm going to make. So I like
Yeah.
that. Steal that.
You're welcome. But at the end of the day, it is, I mean, this is something that I talk about a lot. It is all about behavior. Like money is, yes, there is numbers involved. Yes, there are literally spreadsheets that you need to use. And it is, you need to balance things and all about budgeting. But actually, that all stems from your behavior and how you can manipulate your behavior by getting yourself into good habits. And yeah, I just think if once people focus on that, and it sounds so airy fairy from I always used to think it was anyway, focus on your behavior and then all this, but it's so true. Once you just have that little one thing you can improve, it snowballs.
Yeah, and even the word budget is a really interesting one.
Mm,
I think I created an episode actually on having a no spend month and
yeah,
talking about budgeting. And I think the word budget can trigger people to feel very restricted.
yeah,
And restriction is the quickest way to overspend. If you think of dieting, if
yeah,
anyone listening to this has ever said, want to tone up, want to lose a few pounds, I'm going to cut out wine, I'm going to not eat chocolate, I'm going to do this, your brain goes, what? We're not
mm,
having it. Right, I want it even more. And all you can think about is wine and pizza and takeaway and chocolate. And I think we have to be careful with money. We need to be sensible. We need to be logical. And not but, and if we use the word budget and that makes us feel like we're five again and we can't have the sweets from the sweet shop,
mm,
potentially, if we don't have control over that, we are going to end up overspending, buying things that we can't afford just because we've used the word budget, versus going, budgeting is great because I'm amazing with money. This makes me feel so good. I feel like then when I buy stuff, it's really, I don't know, insert whatever word you want.
mm.
It's really well thought out. It's really sensible. It's really grown up. Being grown up around money is a concept I talk about quite a lot, but yeah, language, the phrasing we use, making it work for us, I think is really important as well.
Yeah, budgeting in particular is something that I used to always think was what poor people did to allocate the very small amount of resources that they had. So when I started learning about money, obviously budgeting is a major part of getting your personal finances together. And even when you have a ton of money, budgeting is still something you need to be doing. Um, but it went from, like you said, a restrictive kind of like, oh, I can't do this, to, oh, I can allocate a certain amount of money to have guilt-free spending in a certain area. So we as a household have every month now a family fun day, and we allocate a certain percentage of money, and we take turns between me, my wife, and my daughter. We take turns. We have, £100. It doesn't matter what you can spend that £100 on ice cream if you wanted to and go to the beach. That's your family fun day. Or you can kind of do a bunch of different things. But that money is, there's not even now. And actually, when I say about kind of my negative emotion towards spending money, when it comes to that money, because it's in the budget allocated family fun, there's not even a slight bit of guilt or even emotion. No negative emotion. There's definitely positive emotion, but no negative emotion attached to tapping that card on whatever it is. Something that beforehand I would have been like, oh shit, do I have enough? Oh, I've not got enough money in the bank account. Or it's this kind of like, oh, is it going to work? Or I shouldn't do that because I could do something else. So that budget is absolutely, for many people, is a restrictive word, but actually it's more empowering than anything, because it actually allows you to do things that beforehand you just wouldn't have done, or if you did, you felt tremendous guilt for the rest of the month because you thought, I could have used that money for something else.
Yeah, there's no guilt. I love that phrase, fun money. We talk about
Mm,
like having a fun money pot that might be £5 or it might be £500, but it's
yeah,
just a feeling of that money is for
yeah,
enjoyment, fun, having a great time. There is no negativity attached to it, and it is protected for family, fun, whatever you
yeah,
want to do. Yeah, great.
absolutely. Victoria, thank you very much for this very public counselling session that you've given me.
You're welcome. I'll send you the voice. Don't worry.
No, genuinely, it's been really interesting, and I've been thinking more and more recently towards this sort of manifesting positive. You can make things happen, because there's one thing I wanted to bring up to you. Maybe in a future episode we can talk about, but my only thought of what kind of manifesting and the stuff that you talk about previously would have been The Secret, the book, the documentary, and there's a lot of negative stuff surrounded by that. My wife has more of that kind of inclination to like that sort of thing, but I think she watched or read The Secret years ago, and it's before we bought this property. And she did that I think what part of it was get a picture of what you want, put it on the fridge or whatever, and then look at it all the time. And look, we're in the house that she wanted to buy. So I think like she made that work. But for me, I was like, no, you did that because you took action. But actually, she took action because she read the book. So it does work.
It does work. It does work because the action bit is really key. The actions are so much easier to take when you have a
Mm,
belief that it's possible. So why not kind of work on the visualizing, the
mm.
programming your subconscious mind? Why not make things easy for you, for yourself.
Absolutely.
That's kind of what manifesting is doing, I think.
Absolutely. Everyone who's listening, go and check Victoria out. Where should they go? Anyone who's listening, to find out about your services, about the content that you create, where can they find you?
The easiest place is probably Instagram. So I'm at victoria.maskell, or you can go to my website, which is just victoriamaskell.com. Basically, if you can spell my name, you'll find me on TikTok, you'll find my website, you'll find me on Instagram. And from there, people can find out about like my manifestation membership that's called the Manifestation Room, and my podcast called the Positivity and Prosperity Podcast.
Which I highly recommend, because I have recently started listening to.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
No problem. Victoria, thank you very much for your time. I'll put all the links to everything you just said in the description. But yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.